In the Catholic world, Corpus Christi takes place 60 days after the Easter resurrection. It celebrates the transubstantiation mystery, which means the changing of bread and wine into the blood and flesh of Christ. Each year, Cusco celebrates two capital holidays, one right after the other. Each year, like the two faces of a coin, Corpus Christi precedes Inti Raymi. Two holidays where the Andean ethos of the ancient capital of the Inca Empire is not only preserved, but receives new forces. Remote creations from ancient pre-Columbian cultures, many times absorbed and transformed as they melted with the Occidental heritage. This way, the son of the Incas will turn into a visual metaphor of Christ. Ancient Inca emblems will be redefined to resemble the solar disk in the holy monstrance as an image of the Son of God, center of the universe and synthesis of time and history. This is Cusco, the ancient capital of the Inca Empire, that one of the Spanish conquerors called head of all the kingdoms of Peru. This is the oldest city in America. 700 years of history that condenses the greatest splendor of Andean cultures and their fusion with the Western and Christian worlds. Perhaps here, better than anywhere else, this fertile marriage of Hispanic and Andean cultures is shown. Complete streets of geometrical patterns, great Spanish white walls placed on massive stone Inca walls, churches, belfries, small squares, bell gables, facades, and all the red tiled roofs. Moreover, the red of the roof tiles covering all ceilings. This same city gave birth to La Sierra de Plata and El Dorado myths in the 16th century. These stories appeared just because of the legendary greatness and magnificence of the empire. For almost 500 years, Cusco has celebrated Corpus Christi as its main holiday. Pututos, traditional seashell horns, sound in all streets and squares around the city. This is the signal. The moment has come to move the holy images of the patron saints from the different parishes to the Metropolitan Basilica for the Corpus Christi procession. Today is a great holiday for Cusco. The city proudly shows its flag, which brings to mind the Inca Empire as the colors of the rainbow. This is the sign that appeared before the founders of the empire and their successors took as a banner. From very early on the eve of the great procession, parishioners gather in neighborhoods, parishes, fraternities, and brotherhoods under the command of their leaders. People arrive with their images, carrying their banners and accompanied by musical bands. Local beverages and beer help to keep up the enthusiasm of the participants. A brief Andean ceremony, La Tinca, demands to toast first with Mother Land, La Pachamama, to thank her for all her favors received. Another tradition is also here. These dancers, dressed for a magic and religious Andean ritual, give a magnificent prologue to the great party that is going to take place. Here, everything has a meaning. This group, for example, is made up of two kinds of characters. Los chunchos from Antisuyu, with their colorful feathers, represent the presence of the Inca Empire in the tropical valleys and the Amazon. It is like a reminder of El Dorado. And these others are Ukukus, or Pabluchas, magic characters with their faces covered, with ski masks to be recognized and respected by the crowd. These men have arrived from the great celebration of Koiloriti, also named Lord of the Ice or Bright Star of the Snow. This ceremony took place just a day before, by the Ausangate, the snow-covered sacred mountain south of Cusco.
La procesión de Corpus Christi es una simbiosis. Conjunta lo antiguo de la devoción incaica, de la devoción indígena, con lo actual de la devoción católica de la cultura cristiana.
These mysterious characters with whistling voices are called to keep up the discipline during Koiloriti, where they will climb to an altitude of 17,000 feet, carrying these huge ice blocks on their backs.
El martes anterior a Corpus Christi, en Koiloriti tenemos una peregrinación de más de 80.000 campesinos, todos de condición indígena, que hacen derroche de fe, derroche de esperanza, derroche de caridad fraterna y se sienten todos hijos de un solo Dios, hermanos en una sola fe.
These pieces of ice will be shared between all assistants, but they will also be taken to their communities, not only to guarantee purification of men and things, but as a fertility ritual linked to the farming cycle. Morning goes on, and the images of saints arrive for a previous meeting in Santa Clara Church. As it is a tradition, once all of them have gathered, they will leave towards the cathedral. This procession is called La Entrada, the entrance. Many people have come not only from Cusco nearby, but from far in the Andean nations, the south of Peru and the north of Bolivia and Chile.
Una cierta cantidad de personas que apoyamos a la comunidad y tenemos que ser partícipes con los productos, acompañando, como nos han dejado los ancestros esa costumbre, nosotros seguimos haciendo prevalecer esa costumbre.
Yo radico allá en Bolivia. Desde Bolivia estoy viniendo ya 2 años ya a hacer acá el Señor San José. Tengo fe, lo estoy haciendo con bastante fe, sé que me va a ayudar, no pido mucho.
Towards noon, the strokes of Santa Clara's belfry announce the moving of the saints to the cathedral. This moving started very early, in fact, from their original parishes at dawn. At dawn, in the San Jerónimos district, south of the city, and about half an hour from downtown, the bells call the neighbors. Soon they will leave towards the town, carrying the images of their patron saint, Saint Geronimo. In San Jerónimo, the procession starts, accompanied by the musical band and the noise of bangers, the fireworks that break the silence in the peaceful Andean morning. At the same time, something similar happens in the other 15 Cusco parishes that prepare their own patrons to gather in downtown Cusco. Meanwhile, 2 miles away from the city, the little Virgin, La Virgencita de Poroy, crosses the mountains carried by a few cargo yokes, the porters who will increase in number on their way to Cusco. These few brothers, followed by an unfailing musical band, carry their female patron saint while the sun slowly heats this chilly morning. During the day, the St. Geronimo procession has grown more numerous. Crossing fields, Poroy's little Virgin doesn't stop, crossing mountains and getting closer to Cusco. At noon, St. Geronimo has arrived at the San Sebastian Church to make a little stop on his way. This is a fine opportunity to have a Mass, to honor 2 of the most devoted and traditional patron saints, or for them to receive tribute from the crowd. Later, they will march together, St. Geronimo leading the way. Soon and dramatically, it is Saint Sebastian's time. His heavy image will defy the laws of gravity, descending the atrium steps with enormous effort from the porters. Then everything will be ready to pass to the last stretch to the imperial city, to Cusco, Rome of the Indians and center of the American world. We are in Santa Clara, gathering point for all saints before going to the cathedral. Here, the last arrangements of the images are made. From Santísima Virgen de Belén, the patron saint of Cusco, to Virgen de los Remedios, a beautiful and venerable image donated by Charles V. Finally, all the images are together. They will be arranged with special care. Every one trying to look better than his neighbour, and trying as well to improve the last year's appearance. This Cusco Clarices temple may be one of the most eloquent icons of the religious and Baroque character of this city. Its roofs heavily decorated, its walls embellished with pictures from the famous Cusco school of painting, and altars amazingly rich, full of mirrors and entirely covered with gold foil. This incredible Cusco representation sums up almost 500 years of history and faith. A faith that is increased as the parishes move their saints to the Metropolitan Cathedral, whispering a prayer to the Holy Virgin, Mamacha de Belén. First to appear is Saint Geronimo, in the middle of the noise of the crowd and the march played by the band. Saint Geronimo is followed by his court of masters, Los Mandones. They play pututos, horns made of seashells that announce the solemn entrance of their patron saint. The image is also preceded by a group of dancers. Their masks are a parody of the white men or Spaniards, the mistis. Then the St. Christopher image, carried by neighbours of his parish. The popular belief says it is not only one of the biggest litters, but the heaviest. The weight of this image gave origin to the legend that says that the image hides in its interior a huaca, an ancient sacred Inca stone. Every now and then, it seems like the image will smash against the crowd, which roars with a cry close to panic. Suddenly it seems like men from different parishes will break out in a fight, in addition disputing the honour of carrying the image of their patron saint. They are whimsical, brave and daring, and of course proud. Proud of carrying on their shoulders one of the most admired and popular saints of the city. With the images go La Payana, joyfully moved by the young scoundrels of the parish. This is one of the most important social initiation rituals for Cusco's children. This phenomenon relates to the removing of many patron saints. There is no child between 10 and 12 years old in this city who misses participating in the ritual that practically marks the transition from childhood to puberty. These processions are different in the seriousness or solemnity of other Catholic processions in other parts of the world. A misinformed spectator could think this is a total chaos, up to the point of breaking into a massive fight. When one saint's porters argue with others, to hurry them up or to move out of the way, to let them arrive first at the cathedral. This celebration also marks a great spirit of rivalry and competition. During the day, all saints will be marched to the historical Cathedral of Cusco. Preceding other saints and virgins, the magnificent image of Saint Sebastian passes, carried by its barefoot, robust porters. After Saint Sebastian come the virgins, all together and accompany each other on the procession, since a lady in Cusco who walks alone on the streets is not well seen amongst Cusqueños. By the afternoon, the main square is full of the faithful when the images begin to enter the basilica to take part in a vigil with the doors closed. Tomorrow, they will come out for the great procession to Corpus Grande. This celebration has taken place every year since June the 9th, 1547, as Garcilaso Inca de la Vega testifies. When the Catholic Church arrived in this land, it found not only a splendid culture with a high development level, but also found land fertile for evangelization. As the time passed, a mixture between local beliefs and Catholicism was born. Products of such mixtures are the singular expression of popular faith.
Cuando el cristianismo llega a América, lo que llega realmente, además del cristianismo por supuesto, es también una forma cultural la que llega. Esa forma cultural se encuentra con otra forma cultural, ¿no? De ahí nace en procesos a veces violentos, a veces no tan violentos, nace una serie de síntesis, que sería una expresión mejor que sincretismo, ¿no? En donde las más profundas verdades empiezan a asumir formas que no son siempre las mismas.
La llegada a América permite revivir algunos de los rasgos del catolicismo antiguo, y uno de ellos, que es característica del catolicismo, es aceptar fácilmente las costumbres, las prácticas, y con una cierta condescendencia, pese al hecho de la extirpación de idolatrías y todo lo que quiera.
Since the time of the conquest, from California to Tierra del Fuego, all religious manifestations have taken local colors. They filled with their own cultural accents, dressed completely with their own colors, and sang their own melodies.
Entonces el cristianismo va muy prontamente a asumir al sol como su símbolo, pero representando a ese sol en Cristo. Cristo es el sol de la humanidad. Entonces, nada tiene de raro que la hostia en su custodia asuma una forma solar, ¿no? Y nada tiene de raro tampoco que al llegar esa forma cultural europea acá y se encuentre con el tema solar, estas dos cosas se junten de manera lo más natural. O sea, no hay aquí ningún sincretismo, aquí hay una síntesis que quizás no esté adecuadamente asumida, quizás no se tenga una plena conciencia de esto, pero es un hecho que aquí hay una síntesis de un elemento que es común, no solamente a dos mundos, el europeo y el andino, ¿no?, sino a toda la humanidad.
En España misma han visto en América como, entre comillas, la salvación del catolicismo. Bartolomé Las Casas también tenía esta idea y otros han visto que educando a los indios, como era gente muy sencilla y hasta virgen, digamos así, podía asimilar y expresar el catolicismo en sus expresiones más puras, digamos, más sinceras, más sencillas.
It is the morning of Corpus. Waited on for a year, the moment has finally arrived. Patron saints are kept in the nave of the cathedral and wait their turn to go out into the square. Surrounded by the parish that comes to entrust themselves to them. This is no doubt one of the biggest manifestations of Catholic faith in the contemporary world. Here, in this magnificent temple, the Cusco Cathedral. This metropolitan basilica, erected as a bulwark and as one of the most important colonial monuments in America. It is said that it was thought out as a Latin cross planted in the heart of the Andes. Its huge dimensions were to compete with Inca stone temples and palaces and to dazzle the natives' spirit. Its walls have much of the story of this country and this city. Cusco, heart and symbol of Peru. Thus, on their Carguoc shoulders, one by one, the patrons start coming out to the square, announcing the beginning of the main festivity of a diocese that yesteryear covered an area that stretched from the southern settings of Rio de la Plata to Central American territories in Nicaragua. Then, following a 500-year deep-rooted tradition, the bishop of the oldest diocese in South America comes out to the main square, accompanied by the ecclesiastical council, the orders, the religious congregations, and the seminarists. A tradition linked to the presence of Catholicism in these territories. Minutes later, the Archbishop of Cusco celebrates Mass in the magnificent cathedral atrium, accompanied by highest priests and guests.
Caime Dios pa Cordero, Caime Rakona Hujankona Bambacha, Dios Nei, Manam Kamai Tichukani, Wakshal Mai Manchaye Kamunaitipa, Ichaha Huximidai Kitani, Almaita, Alingesinaikipa.
Señor,
Questo
no soy
poco
digno de que entres en mi
causa
casa,
meta,
pero una
cuidai
palabra
fa-
tuya bastará para sanarme.
When Corpus Christi arrives, that is how they call the main day, all the saints' images from the different parishes are taken around the main square. This is the ancient Huacaipata, the Inca square. There is a common belief, not shared by all specialists, that the saints are placed in a specific order that is determined by an ancient local tradition. This would be, according to the ancient division of the city, Hanan Cusco, or Higher Cusco, and Urin Cusco, or Lower Cusco. This is also used to determine dynasties and differences amongst Incas and their descendants. This human bias that shaped them in rivalry for economic, social, and political power.
En ese sentido, hay la percepción que la disposición de los santos, sobre todo en la catedral, obedece a ese criterio de arriba y abajo, que es una forma muy fuerte en los Andes de percibir todo a través de la llamada dualidad, que concibe el universo, el tiempo, los seres vivientes, la cultura, en fin, todo formando dos partes que se basan en la relación derecha-izquierda. Y de ahí surge toda una serie de relaciones que forman una gran estructura que se basa en este principio de oposición complementaria. Derecha, que tiene connotación masculina, izquierda, connotación femenina, este, que es la connotación también masculina, salida del sol, el día, y el oeste izquierdo, que es la noche, que es femenino. Y de esta manera se concibe que la disposición de las imágenes del Corpus Christi en la catedral están siguiendo esta misma percepción.
That is why, since Inca times, every parish has tried to keep the relation with the old patriarchal lineage of the oldest Cusco families. Ensuring in that way that the relationship between the patron saint and the parish church is so old that it can be traced back to Inca times. Keeping this in mind, for example, St. Anthony, who is represented with a pig at his feet, a Christian symbol of temptation, is, in the Andes, the representative of the lower world, dominated by the mythical Imamama. When St. Christopher is represented crossing a river, the river he crosses is no other than the Pilcomayo. The red and white river stems from Pachamama, the Mother Earth. The fact that St. Sebastian is represented tied to a tree, called in Quechua a malki, makes him a representative of the ancestral mummies. The purified Virgin, totally pure, takes the place of the morning star. And finally, the Immaculate Conception, or the Beautiful One, from the cathedral, is crowned with bright sun rays from a probably masculine power that relates her to the sun, or Inti. There are 15 saints in the procession, but only 11 of them have these links with Andean symbols. This is why some believe it is part of the cultural continuity in the Andean world. It shows a mental structure that pops up in Andean ways whenever great events like Catholic Corpus occur. This tradition is shown in the great care everybody takes to organize everything, despite the fact that there is no central organization to handle the celebration. Dozens of majordomos, or cargullocs, add to the volunteer brother, cofrados, brotherhoods and associations from all social levels. Everyone makes their personal effort and gives money, goods, jewels, dresses and robes. The effort is great due to fear of social censure from devotees. The occasion is suitable to free all artistic expression. Banners are embroidered. Textiles for the saints. Brotherhoods are uniform. Dancers and musicians are contracted. All this is just an ephemeral creation that will last only for Corpus. Even costumes, embroideries and textiles will appear for just a few hours. Later, they will be kept locked forever. Once the Mass given by the bishop has finished, he will lead the Holy Monstrance procession in the same silver cover built in the 18th century. As in the past, Knights of the Order of Santiago, the town council and political authorities lead the procession, along with the ecclesiastical council, religious orders and seminaries. Said ceremony lasts more than an hour. While priests and neighbours open up the street, others pour down petals from the balconies. The midday sun arrives. Incense and religious anthems set the tempo for the believers' march. To ease the stifling heat that has totally filled the square. The ceremony is astonishing. The impressive religious retinue turns around the main square anti-clockwise. While the penitent kneeling bishop prays the rosary in front of the Santissimo Sacramento. Once the tour is finished, the monstrance is lowered from its silver base. Finally, it is solemnly taken back to the cathedral. Following tradition, St. Jeremiah hits the march. Magnificent, sternly frowning, beard long, under his huge red hat, good against sunburn. The massive figure of the great doctor, sculptured by an Indian master, on top of an enormous oak litter. He is carried on the shoulders of his robust porters, distributed in rights and lefts. The wild sound of pututos, mixed with bass drums, flutes and horns, give a primitive, martial, dramatic feeling. St. Christopher follows, patron saint for Hanan Cusco, the old neighborhood. He is on top of a litter as big and as heavy as the first. He represents the action of crossing a river, carrying the child on his shoulders, leaning on a log. The sculpture on colored wood, made in the 17th century, is attributed to a famous Indian master, Melchor Waman Maita. Saint Christopher, it is popularly said, represents Pachacuti, the mythical Inca of the Yupanqui dynasty, who transformed Cusco and the empire, the Andean Julius Caesar. For that reason, his porters are overwhelmed with popular joy and energy. Cusco tradition tells that Cristobal Pauyo Inca, a brother of Atahualpa, the last of the reigning Incas, founded St. Christopher Parish Church. Now St. Sebastian crosses. His aspect, half victim and half martyr, unchangeable, eternal. The body crossed by silver arrows and tied to a tree. The sculpture, made in the 17th century, is also the work of the master Waman Maita. His litter is amongst the most luxurious and reminds us of the old viceregal galleon's prows. Plenty of gold and silver, his ornamented Salomonic columns and spiral supports. At this point, the festivity has definitely turned to a strange mixture of Christian devotion and Andean ritual. Now it is St. Anthony Abad, patron saint of the diocesan, seminar and the university, and the butcher's patron saint as well. He wears his diadem, scale with sonorous bell, his book on fire, and his pig, all made of silver. Next comes the time for the Placid Saints, led by St. Peter, the Pope, dressed as the pontiff and carrying the keys of the kingdom. Patron St. Joseph also comes, carrying baby Jesus. St. Joseph is also patron saint of bachelors and carpenters. Now follows San Blas, known here as Yawar Maka, meaning red hands, coming from his small Cusco parish church, famous for its craftsmen and wonderful pulpit, totally carved in wood, at the time made to celebrate the triumph of the church over the heretics. Headed by dignified Cusco ladies, candle in hand, colourfully dressed, unmistakably respectful. Afterwards, Santiago appears, seated with his white apostles' costumes, carried by 24 persons that form his brotherhood, and accompanied by his order of knights. Talking about Santiago, Uriel Garcia, a Cusco writer, has said, "Horse sculpture, enthusiasm and joys of children, warrior and virile, on his great white horse, swinging his flaming sword, dressed as a marshal of the Republic, his white hat and white robe over his braids, crossing Cusco squares, fast, daring marshal, anxious as a victorious Ayocachano, formally claiming to the roar of the crowd, 'Down with the Spaniards.'" This is Saint Anne. Her dress is in brocade and damask, full of jewelry and lace. Then comes Saint Barbara, Poroy's small virgin. They say this saint always comes on the procession with Saint Anne. She is the escort of the mother of Jesus. Afterwards comes the Virgin of the Nativity, known locally as Virgin de la Modena, an old Spanish tradition from the beginning of the conquests. It tells about a miracle that occurred when the Spaniards were under the power of the Moors. Then is the Virgin Purificada. This name refers to Holy Mary, when she went to the temple for purification after Christ was born. It is also associated with other places as Virgen de la Candelaria, one of the most important cults in the south of Peru and north of Bolivia and Chile. Now is time for Virgin of the Remedies. In her cortege, men go before women. Taken by professionals as their patron saint, she mainly groups the middle class from the city, as well as some craftsmen. And this is Mary, the mother of Jesus, Virgin of Bethlehem, Cusco's patron saint. Cusco people say in her litter, the faith of the porters will increase. And for the crowd's eyes, the light of emotion sparkles, for looking at this icon touched by centuries of history and faith, because this image and Señor de los Temblores are the ones Cusco revere with a fanatical faith close to idolatry. And the procession closes, one of the jewels of the city, the Immaculate Conception. Surrounded by little angels, this is the saint of the cathedral, known by the people as the beautiful La Linda. La Linda, whose jewel cases and chests have been enriched by bishops and canons, magistrates and tycoons on her carved silver litter. This was paid for by Dr. Diego Arias, who, before dying, named this image her only and universal inheritor. In this way, Corpus Christi is over, and Cusco then prepares, like every year, for the party that takes place every June the 24th. It is the Inti Raymi, or celebration of the sun, a reminder of the great Inca past. Having been in the time of the Incas one of the holiest celebrations, and due to the proximity between the two, many believe that Corpus Christi is a replacement of the ancient Inti Raymi celebration. Specialists do not always accept this theory.
Cuando esta festividad llega acá, se va a encontrar, ¿no?, con que en vez de el solsticio de verano, se encuentra con el solsticio de invierno. Es como si el Corpus cayera en Navidad. Entonces yo creo que la asimilación de estos dos conceptos es ya casi obvia, ¿no? Ya casi obvia. No fue premeditado, obviamente, ¿no? Trajeron eso y se encuentran con el Inti Raymi, fiesta solar por excelencia, ¿no? Entonces la asimilación creo que cae por su peso.
Hay una posibilidad que había una ceremonia de la cosecha en el cual había un desfile de dignatarios entre lo que es San Sebastián, el pueblo de San Sebastián actualmente, y el Cusco. Eso sería lo más remotamente parecido a lo que podría ser el Corpus. Si el Corpus está encima de algo, es encima de esta fiesta de la cosecha, pero no del Inti Raymi, que como digo, este año por supuesto es un mes después.
The Inti Raymi celebration really finished with the Spanish invasion. The Inca royal house ended with the killing of Tupac Amaru I and the politics of idolatry extirpation forced by Viceroy Toledo in the 16th century.
La fiesta del Inti Raymi era una fiesta de los incas. los cuales, siendo las élites del imperio, prácticamente ya no existían, o estaban muy pauperizadas y muy poco representadas. Luego, digamos, todas las guerras civiles, las luchas españolas contra los indios, y por lo tanto la fiesta más bien del Corpus Christi era una fiesta prácticamente dictada por las exigencias religiosas del grupo español.
A testimony of this continuity is the beautiful paintings from the 17th century known as Santa Anna Corpus, after the parish church where they were originally placed. They express not only a testimony from the past, but the seal of the personality of their sponsor, Bishop Don Manuel de Moinedo y Angulo.
Bueno, Manuel de Moinedo y Angulo es un formidable obispo de origen madrileño que gobierna la diócesis entre 1673 y 1699, es decir, en la segunda mitad del siglo XVII, coincidiendo con el final de la dinastía de los Habsburgo, cuando Carlos II, el último de los Habsburgos o Austrias, va a fallecer en 1700. Dentro de ese marco de intereses en el arte de Manuel de Moinedo ocurre la serie famosa de la procesión del Corpus Christi. Esa serie, compuesta de más de 12 o 13 cuadros, que estuvieron en la iglesia de Santana del Cusco en una época y hoy día están en el Museo de Arte Religioso de la Ciudad Imperial. Esa serie retrata el Cusco, retrata las calles, retrata los estamentos sociales, la nobleza, la burguesía, el cabildo, las personas del mundo eclesiástico, el pueblo, que se ve magníficamente representado en estos lienzos. Estos lienzos también están retratando a las órdenes religiosas, las diversas andas que llevan a los santos de los barrios de la ciudad y de pueblos lejanos como San Jerónimo y San Sebastián. Nos dan una idea bastante clara del Cusco que va de 1675 a 1680. Es por eso que se explica que las grandes celebraciones religiosas, y principalmente la del Corpus Christi, tuvieron un cuidado especial de ser manejadas de una forma principalísima por la autoridad civil y la eclesiástica. Esa es la razón, en gran parte, por la cual el virrey Francisco de Toledo le concedió la mayor importancia a estas celebraciones, porque al fin y al cabo, una de sus obligaciones mayores era la evangelización de los indígenas. Y la evangelización también pasaba por el hecho de que las grandes celebraciones eclesiásticas, sean las misas solemnes, sean las misas ordinarias, sean las procesiones cotidianas o las grandes procesiones como el Corpus Christi, proyectaban como imágenes en el alma de los indígenas la nueva fe. Esta nueva fe importantísima que era pues parte sustancial de la conquista. El imperio de los Incas y el virreinato del Perú hasta el siglo XVIII fue la expresión de una potencia intelectual, social, militar y administrativa extraordinaria. En ese sentido, entonces, por ejemplo, la procesión del Corpus, que con ser una procesión religiosa que aparentemente no tiene nada que ver con el aspecto político, sin embargo sí tiene que ver. Tiene que ver con el hecho de que hay momentos en la historia del Perú que sí han producido una capacidad cultural formidable, de una gran energía que viene hasta nosotros hoy, pero que está sustentada en bases reales. Esas bases reales, en el caso del Corpus Christi, es la catolicidad del pueblo peruano, su cristianismo, su raíz verdadera en ese tipo de creencias, y muy respetables, que son las que continúan hasta hoy y que le dan fuerza y coherencia a la nación.
Entering the 20th century, the new artistic tendencies took charge to reflect corpus continuity to the future generations. Amongst them the legacy of Don Francisco González Gamarra, a great Cusco plastic artist, are particularly precious. He, in his vast and encyclopedic work, has given an inheritance to us of a beautiful collection of watercolors celebrating his motherland. Through the marked Andean polychrome enriched in one of the greatest moments of his creative life, he gave us this fundamental thought on urban and human color, a link in continuity that introduces the celebration into the 20th century landscape. This century brought photography as well, to make eternal not only the procession, but also the evolution of the urban landscape, probably in a Cusco closer to that of Era Molinero than to the one we know nowadays. Historian Luis Valcárcel used to say, talking about Corpus Christi, it reveals Andean people in a facet that shows better than any other the essence of its culture, faith. Because it is in the religious that humans are more conservative and linked to ancient formulae, that gives us an incredible reminder of the most remote elements of that character. This way, the celebration is the true religious expression, in its rich complexity, in its inextinguishable attractive power. Around the celebration, the whole universe turns. Gods and men get closer and touch in time and space. Out of the celebration circle, the world is sort of suspended. Celebration is the longed discontinuity for a monotone existence. Its huge importance to the men of this land is then clear. Corpus procession in Cusco, the navel of the world, expresses on the one hand a fundamental place for Catholicism in the New World history, not only from the religious point of view, but social, artistic, and cultural. On the other hand, and especially, the extraordinary vitality of the Andean people, so deeply tied to their own way of being, despite the influences and happenings of the unbearable passing of time.